Life lessons from the elderly. What if the way you've been intimate throughout your life is the actual reason you lost closeness in your later years? Let me share Harold's story. At 72, Harold was kind-hearted, retired, and recently divorced. He met someone special and after years of silence attempted to reconnect intimately. However, his body didn't cooperate. He panicked. She pulled away and he never tried again, not because he didn't want to, but because he believed he was broken. I'm Dr. James, a urologist and men's health specialist. Over the past 30 years, I've helped thousands of men in their 60s, 70s, and beyond regain their confidence, restore intimacy, and protect their health in ways they never imagined possible. Many men think that their sex life naturally ends with age, but that's not the case. What truly holds them back is what they were never taught. Today, I'll share 5 crucial truths about intimacy that older men wish they'd known earlier and the real cost of not knowing them. Before we continue, if you find this honest, life-changing advice helpful, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a message made for men like you. And if this resonates with you, type 1 in the comments to let me know you're here. If not, type 0. I truly want to help and serve you better. Now let's dive into the first truth, because it's the one that quietly breaks more hearts and confidence than any other. The myth that intimacy after 60 should still be spontaneous. Secret 1. You can't rely on spontaneity anymore, and that's not a weakness, it's wisdom. When you were younger, intimacy could happen anywhere, anytime. You didn't have to think twice. Your desire matched your ability, and everything just flowed. There was pride in being ready on demand without needing to talk, plan, or prepare. For many men, that spontaneity was part of what made intimacy exciting. But here's the truth that no one tells you. After 60, the rules change. Clinging to the belief that you should still perform whenever the moment arises is not only unrealistic, it's dangerous. I've seen countless men come into my office with their heads down, avoiding eye contact. They're not sick or injured, but they're crushed emotionally and psychologically because of one failed attempt at intimacy. They tried to be intimate, but their body didn't cooperate. Instead of understanding what happened, they blamed themselves, feeling weak, embarrassed, and ashamed. Some avoided sex altogether after that. Others pretended it never happened and quietly suffered. But most never asked for help. One man, Gerald, stood out. He was 69, healthy, active, and had recently started seeing someone after years of being alone. Things were going well until one night when intimacy turned physical. He hadn't prepared. He thought everything would just happen naturally, like it always had. But when it didn't, when his body failed him, he panicked. He made an excuse and never called her again, not because he didn't care, but because he was humiliated. He later told me, "It felt like I lost a part of my manhood that night." This is the price many older men pay when they don't understand the reality of aging and intimacy. It's not just a disappointing night, it's a blow to your identity, confidence, and emotional well-being. And for some men, it's the beginning of isolation. They stop trying, pull away from their partners, and lose connection, not just physically, but emotionally. As emotional distance grows, so does loneliness, resentment, and the belief that their best years are behind them. But here's the truth I need you to hear. Losing spontaneity is not the same as losing intimacy. What worked at 30 was based on biology. What works at 60, 70, or 80 must be based on intention, communication, and preparation. That's not weakness, that's wisdom, it's maturity, and in many ways it creates a deeper, more meaningful connection. Planning for intimacy doesn't kill the magic, it protects it. It signals to your body, your partner, and your heart that this matters. It gives you time to support your blood flow, reduce stress, avoid medications that interfere, and create the right emotional environment. More importantly, it relieves pressure. When you stop expecting your body to rise to the occasion like it once did, you begin to find peace and pleasure in the process, not just the performance. But ignoring this truth comes with serious risks. I'm not just talking about emotional disappointment. I'm talking about men who have suffered heart attacks, strokes, or sudden drops in blood pressure because they tried to push their bodies too hard, too fast, without preparation. Intimacy, like any physical activity, demands respect. If you treat sex after 60 like sex in your 20s, you might be gambling with more than just your ego. You could be gambling with your life. I've counseled widows who lost their husbands during intimacy because the men were too proud to admit they needed to slow down. I've spoken to men who ended up in the ER after mixing blood pressure meds with enhancement pills without consulting a doctor. Too many men have paid the ultimate price because no one warned them that aging changes the game, and you must play it differently. The good news is this: once you understand that intimacy in later life requires a different approach, everything begins to change. Communication deepens, anxiety disappears, satisfaction returns, and most importantly, you reclaim your role, not as the man you were at 30, but as the wiser, more grounded man you are now. So if you've been feeling disconnected, frustrated, or ashamed, know this: it's not the end. It's a new beginning if you're willing to let go of outdated expectations and embrace a smarter, safer, and more powerful approach to intimacy. Secret 2. Erections are a window into your heart health. Let's be honest. If you're over 60 and have noticed changes in your ability to get or maintain an erection, it's time to pay attention. Not just because of what it means for your sex life, but because it could be a sign of something much more serious for your heart. Too many men see erectile dysfunction as just a bedroom issue, something to laugh off or quietly ignore. What they don't realize is that an erection is much more than a sexual response. It's a cardiovascular event. It's one of the most sensitive indicators of blood flow in your body. I remember a patient named David, who was 67, married, still working part-time, and staying active. He came to see me because he was having trouble in the bedroom. Nothing major, just not quite the same as before. Probably just age, right, Doc? He laughed, but I didn't laugh. I asked him a few questions, ran a few tests, and something didn't sit right. I ordered a full cardiac workup. 3 weeks later, David was in surgery for a 90% blockage in his left anterior descending artery, the one they call the widowmaker. That night, David called me from his hospital bed. I came in thinking I had a sex problem, he said. Turns out I had a time bomb in my chest. What most men don't realize is that the arteries in the penis are smaller than those in the heart. This means they clog or narrow faster. If blood can't flow there, it's a red flag that your larger arteries, especially the ones feeding your heart and brain, may already be compromised. Erectile dysfunction is often the first sign of cardiovascular disease. It's your body's way of begging for help. The cost of ignoring that signal is deadly. I've seen men brush it off, buy over-the-counter pills, or blame it on stress or age, while they walk around with dangerously high blood pressure, clogged arteries, or undiagnosed diabetes. They don't notice until it's too late, until a stroke paralyzes them, until a heart attack hits during sleep, until the damage is irreversible. And it doesn't just stop with physical danger. The emotional toll is just as devastating. When a man feels like he's losing control of his body, it chips away at his confidence, his self-image, and even his will to connect. He may withdraw from his partner, stop pursuing intimacy out of fear, and slowly feel invisible, like his best years have passed him by. But here's the truth. It doesn't have to be that way. You have more control than you think. If you treat your erection as a signal instead of a shameful issue, you can catch problems early. You can make powerful changes that not only improve your sex life, but extend your life. A weak erection may be your body's way of whispering, "I need help." The tragedy is, so many men wait until that whisper becomes a scream. That's why I urge every man I treat, if something changes in your ability to perform, don't hide it. Don't ignore it. Don't be embarrassed. Be smart. Be proactive. Get your heart checked, run the tests, and have the conversation. One awkward doctor visit today could mean 10 more healthy years with your spouse, family, and life. This isn't about shame, it's about survival. Once you treat the root cause, whether it's blood flow, hormone imbalance, or stress, things often improve. I've had men in their 70s tell me they feel like they're 45 again, not because of magic, but because they listened to their body and acted before it was too late. Secret 3. Sex is more than physical, it's emotional medicine. I want you to think back to a time when you felt deeply connected to someone, not just physically, but emotionally. When their touch made you feel seen, understood, and alive. For many men, those moments are rare and even rarer as we age. But the truth is, intimacy after 60 isn't just about your body, it's about your heart, your mind, and your spirit. And when that emotional connection disappears, the cost is far greater than just a lack of pleasure. I've sat across from men in their 70s, strong men, men who ran businesses, raised families, built legacies, yet their voices trembled when they said, "I haven't felt close to anyone in years, not just sexually." Emotionally, they weren't starving for sex. They were starving for closeness, for human warmth, for someone to touch their hand and mean it. That longing, when left unmet, slowly erodes a man's mental and physical health in ways most doctors never mention. One patient, Martin, was 74. He came to see me not because he was struggling physically, but because he felt numb. His wife had passed 5 years earlier, and since then he'd kept to himself, convinced that intimacy no longer belonged in his life. He said, "What's the point at this age?" But I could see it in his eyes. He missed the connection, the laughter, the touch. And over time, that emotional distance grew into depression, insomnia, and rising blood pressure that no medication seemed to help. What Martin didn't know, and what most older men never hear, is that intimacy is a form of emotional medicine. Physical affection, whether with a partner or through self-touch, releases oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. These aren't just feel-good chemicals. They regulate your mood, reduce stress, improve sleep, support immune function, and lower your risk of heart disease. In short, when you lose intimacy, you lose a powerful part of your health. Yet so many men push intimacy away. They convince themselves that connection is for the young, that expressing need is weakness, and that vulnerability is something to hide. So instead of reaching out, they shut down. They avoid physical closeness, even when it's offered. They suppress their feelings. They go silent. But here's what that silence costs them: increased risk of depression, higher cortisol levels, a weaker immune system, elevated blood pressure, and in many cases, early cognitive decline due to chronic emotional isolation. Yes, I've seen men age 10 years in half the time simply because they had no one to hold, no one to talk to at night, and no one to share their body or soul with. They lived long enough to survive, but not well enough to feel alive. And this isn't just about being in a relationship. Some men are in marriages but haven't truly connected with their spouse in decades. Others live alone but have rich emotional lives through friendships, conversation, and self-acceptance. The point is, emotional intimacy is just as essential as physical health. Without it, you're running on empty. Secret 4: pornography and unrealistic expectations are quietly destroying senior confidence. There's something that few men talk about, but nearly all of them experience. What they turn to when they're lonely, curious, or simply trying to feel something again. It's fast, private, and easy. I'm talking about pornography. And while it may seem harmless, especially as we get older, it is one of the most powerful, silent destroyers of male confidence and intimacy I've seen. In my 30 years of working with men, I've witnessed a heartbreaking pattern. As physical changes start to show, slower arousal, longer recovery times, occasional performance issues, many men quietly retreat into fantasy. They stop trying with their partners, stop asking for affection. Instead, they sit alone with a screen, convincing themselves that it's normal, even necessary. But what they don't realize is that what they're watching is reshaping how they think, feel, and what they expect from themselves and others. I remember a man named Walter. He was 71, retired from the Navy, proud and strong, but something had shifted. He told me he hadn't touched his wife in almost 4 years. "We just drifted apart," he said, but the truth came out slowly. Walter had developed a habit of watching adult content almost daily. What started as an occasional escape became a replacement for real intimacy. Over time, he began comparing what he saw on screen to what he experienced at home. His wife's body, her pace, her sounds, they no longer excited him. He grew bored, then resentful, then silent. Eventually, she stopped reaching for him at all. This is the quiet cost of pornography in older age. It's not just what you see, it's what you stop feeling. Your brain gets used to artificial stimulation, unrealistic bodies, endless novelty, no emotion, no imperfection, and soon reality just doesn't measure up. That warm, imperfect human connection you once treasured starts to feel dull, even irritating. Your body follows. Dopamine pathways begin to shift. It becomes harder to get aroused by touch alone. Some men find they can't climax without a screen in front of them. Others report delayed orgasms, erectile dysfunction, or a complete loss of interest. Perhaps the most damaging part is what happens inside, the silent erosion of confidence, connection, and self-worth. Because no matter how much you watch, you're still left with that empty space afterward. That quiet moment when you wonder why you don't feel satisfied, when you ask yourself, what's wrong with me? You start to think you've changed, that maybe it's just age, but deep down, you know it's not age. It's the fact that you've been feeding your brain something fake for so long, it's forgotten how to respond to what's real, and that's terrifying. I've seen marriages fall apart, not because of infidelity or illness, but because of years of digital disconnection. I've seen men grow distant from their own bodies, no longer trusting themselves to be present without stimulation. I've watched men spiral into guilt, shame, and secrecy, thinking they're alone, thinking no one else struggles like this. But you're not alone, and there is a way back. It starts with understanding that what you consume, especially in isolation, doesn't just affect your arousal. It rewires your expectations. It teaches your mind to demand constant novelty, frictionless excitement, and zero emotional effort. But real intimacy is none of those things. Real intimacy is patient, it's messy, it's emotional, it's grounded in trust, conversation, and presence. And yes, it may feel slower than the instant gratification of a video, but it's deeper, more lasting, more human, and far more fulfilling. Letting go of porn, especially if it's been a habit for years, isn't easy. It requires honesty, support, and sometimes professional guidance. But what's waiting on the other side is worth it. A renewed sense of self, a deeper bond with your partner, a return to natural arousal that doesn't leave you empty afterward. And perhaps most importantly, a reclaimed confidence, the kind that isn't tied to performance or fantasy, but to presence and connection. If you've been living in that quiet disconnect, I urge you to pause and ask yourself, am I still capable of feeling something real? The answer, I assure you, is yes, but you must choose it again and again. Secret 5. The most dangerous time to have sex is when you feel invincible. There's a moment that sneaks up on many older men, a moment when they feel bold, energized, and even invincible. Maybe it's after a good doctor's visit or when an old friend makes a comment like, "You've still got it." Perhaps it's when a new romantic interest stirs something inside that hasn't been awakened in years. And in that moment, something dangerous happens. They feel the need to prove it, to themselves, to their partner, or maybe just to time itself. They want to show the world they've still got what it takes. They want to have sex like they did at 30, no planning, no pacing, no boundaries. And that's when the damage is done. I've seen it over and over again. Men in their 60s, 70s, even 80s who push themselves too far, too fast, all in the name of pride. They drink a little too much wine, skip their heart medication, take an over-the-counter enhancement pill, and step into the bedroom like it's a performance. But inside, their heart is working overtime. Their blood pressure spikes. Their breathing becomes shallow. And their body, which needed care and preparation, is being forced into a moment it's not ready for. One man I'll never forget was Leonard, 74. He was charming, funny, and had recently started dating a younger woman. He came to me once and joked, "Doc, I've got to keep up." I warned him, told him his heart wasn't as strong as it once was, that sex is exercise, not just pleasure. He nodded, smiled, and said, "Don't worry, I know my limits." 2 weeks later, Leonard collapsed in a hotel room, cardiac arrest. His date panicked and called for help, but by the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. His body couldn't handle the pressure of that night, not because he wasn't a man, but because he forgot that aging requires respect, not resistance. The truth is, when older men try to prove they're still young, without caution or care, the price can be fatal. Sex, especially in later life, is not just about arousal. It's a full-body event. Your heart rate rises, your blood vessels expand, and your breathing deepens. It's like climbing a hill physically, and if your heart isn't prepared, if your body is under strain, that hill becomes a cliff. I've spoken to widows who said their husbands died doing what they loved. But behind the smiles and the stories is a much deeper pain, because those deaths weren't peaceful, they were preventable. The mistake isn't in desiring intimacy. It's in ignoring your body's needs. It's in letting your ego speak louder than your experience. It's in treating your partner like an audience instead of a companion. When sex becomes a performance instead of a shared connection, it stops being intimacy and starts being a risk. The fear older men carry, that they're no longer desirable, no longer strong, no longer capable, can push them into decisions that cost them far more than their pride. And that's the tragedy. Because the truth is, you don't need to prove anything. You've lived, loved, and endured more than most. Your worth is not measured by how hard, fast, or long you can perform. It's measured by presence, honesty, and the ability to listen to your partner and to your own body. Slowing down isn't giving up. It's staying alive. Pacing yourself isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Conclusion. What you know now can save you. By now, you've heard the 5 truths that so many older men wish they had known earlier. These aren't just tips or tricks, they are turning points. Quiet, often overlooked moments of wisdom that separate the men who age with strength, love, and vitality from those who slowly disconnect, from their partners, their health, and most painfully, from themselves. If there's one thing I've learned over the years as a doctor, it's that the hardest part of aging isn't the physical decline. It's the emotional toll of feeling invisible, uncertain, or too afraid to speak up. Too many men walk into my office thinking they're alone in their struggles. They believe what they're going through is embarrassing, unusual, or somehow their fault. But the truth is, your body isn't betraying you. It's just changing. And like any change in life, it requires understanding, not shame. Let's take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered. First, we discussed spontaneity, the lie that sex should still just happen like it did when you were 25. But after 60, that mindset sets men up for failure, frustration, and sometimes dangerous outcomes. Planning intimacy is not weakness, it's wisdom. Intimacy becomes more meaningful when it's intentional. Then came the second secret, the one too many men ignore until it's too late. Your erection is a window into your heart. If blood isn't flowing where it used to, it may not be flowing to your heart or brain either. That warning sign could save your life if you choose to listen. The third truth took us deeper. Intimacy isn't just about the body, it's emotional medicine. It heals, grounds, and connects. When men cut themselves off from that emotional layer, whether out of grief, guilt, or pride, they begin to wither. Not because they're old, but because they're alone in a way that breaks the soul. Next, we address the fourth danger, pornography and the distortion of real connection. It starts quietly as a substitute for closeness, but over time, it rewires how you feel, how you love, and how you see yourself. It's not just a habit, it's a habit that can rob you of your ability to be present, to be real, and to be fulfilled. Finally, the last secret. The most dangerous moment for an older man isn't when he feels weak, it's when he tries to prove he's still young. Pushing your body past its limits in the name of pride for the illusion of youth can be fatal. That single choice has cost men their health, their relationships, and, in the worst cases, their lives. But it's avoidable if you're willing to choose presence over pride. Maybe you saw yourself in one of these stories. Maybe you've been struggling in silence, too ashamed or too afraid to speak up. Maybe you've been telling yourself that these changes are just the way things go, and there's nothing you can do about it. But that's where you're wrong. Because knowing these secrets puts you in a new position, not just to understand your body and your intimacy, but to reclaim control over both, to reconnect, to rebuild, and to rewrite what these years look like. Not as a slow decline, but as a conscious, powerful chapter of your life. You don't need to settle for silence. You don't need to disappear into the background of your own story. You're still here. And your presence, your heart, your intimacy, they still matter. In fact, they may matter now more than ever. So here's what I'll leave you with. If anything you've heard today stirred something in you, if it made you reflect, made you uncomfortable, or made you feel seen, don't walk away unchanged. Talk to your partner, talk to your doctor, make that appointment, open that conversation. And most of all, stop believing the lie that this part of your life is behind you. It isn't. There is still so much more waiting for you. More connection, more pleasure, more healing, more love. But it starts with a choice. The choice to stop surviving and start living again. And if you're still with me, still listening, still open, I thank you. Because the men who change their lives are the ones who first find the courage to listen. You've just taken the first step. Now take the next one. If this message spoke to you, if even one part of it made you pause, reflect, or feel seen, I'd be honored if you'd let me know. Type the number 1 in the comments so I know you're still here, still listening, and still choosing to grow. And if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe and tap the bell icon. I share honest, real conversations like this just for men like you, because you deserve more than silence. You deserve the truth and the tools to live your best years with strength, wisdom, and heart.